Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in wa ba'd. This is lesson number 50 from the explanation of Bulugh Maram. And inshallah we'll be dealing with another issue about things that nullify the wudu. So in this hadith, inshallah, it deals with the hijama. And just to clarify this so everybody understands, we already dealt with this issue as far as the blood is concerned. And whether or not bleeding is a nullifier wudu, it makes the wudu invalid. So we already gone over this issue, and this issue kind of falls under that category. But we're going to deal with the hadith, inshallah, because we have to deal with the hadith. We'll deal with the issue just as a revision of the issue. But this issue about the hijama, which is the cupping, it goes back to that. So all right, so the hadith is an Anas radiyallahu anhu anna Nabiy sallallahu alaihi wasallam ihtajama wa salla wa lam yatawadda. أخرجه الدارقطني ولينه. So this hadith is reported on the authority of Anas radiallahu anhu, in which the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam he was cupped, ihtajam. He was cupped, وصلى ولم يتوضأ. All right, so he was cupped and he prayed and he didn't make wudu. Now, first off, I mean, dealing with the hadith in the first place, even Daraqutni, he mentioned, Hafiz al-Muhajir, he mentioned the Daraqutni layinahu. Layinahu, it means that he said that the hadith is like layyin, obviously it means like, soft, weak. So even him, he mentioned, I mean, the chain of narration is not strong. So layyinahu is a nicer way of saying basically that the hadith is la yathbut. And of course with this hadith there are actually even though the hadith it agrees with the rajih, which is the qawl al-jumhur, which is that any type of blood that leaves the body, it does not cause the person's wudu to become invalid. Even though the hadith does agree with that, but the hadith itself is not thabit. All right, and it's just if you see like for example like what Hafiz ibn Hajar did with in Bulugh Maram, you see similarly what Abu Dawood rahimahullah did in his Sunan, is that if there's no hadith in the issue like about the masala, then they'll bring hadith that's da'if or hadith that's mukhtalafi, and it's not bringing it like it's a hujjah, but it's just bringing it because there's nothing else in this issue to deal with this issue. And of course the issue anyways, it goes back to the issue of the blood, like we mentioned. As far as this hadith is concerned, like I said, there's three different ilal in the hadith. I mean, for one, you got Salih ibn Muqatil, and he's da'if, and he narrates this hadith from his father, and his father's majhul. And then also you have Sulaiman ibn Dawood al-Qurashi, and he's also majhul. So three aspects of the hadith, three ilal in the isnad of the hadith that make it da'if anyways. So the hadith is like la yathbut. But because there's nothing that exists in this issue, so the ulama from before, they would bring the hadith just because that's all they had, that's all there was in this issue. So some of the ulama, they used to say that, used to see that hadith da'if is better than no hadith at all, and it's not to build a hukm on the hadith, because the hukm is already built without this hadith, because like I said, the issue, it goes back to the issue of blood. The hijama, the cupping, is no different from any blood leaving your body for any other thing, because even the cupping, the skin has to be broken and the blood has to come out. So it's just like a cut or any other thing that would cause the blood to come out of the body, a scratch, a cut, or whatever. So in any case, then the ruling on this is no different than the ruling on any blood that leaves the body. And as we already gone over, any blood that leaves the body, it does not break the wudu. Period. Now the hadith that they do use to say that, because we talked about this in the previous lesson, is that like one of the statements of the ulama, especially like you'll find this a lot in amongst the Hanabila and in the Sardiya, is that they will say, like, for example, if it's a small amount of blood, then it doesn't break the wudu. But if it's a large amount of blood, then it breaks the wudu and it becomes impure. And this is a hadith that they actually take this from is from Abi Hurairah radhiyallahu anhu, and it's also it's narrated by Daraqutni. And so the hadith actually says an Abi Hurairah radhiyallahu anhu said, "Laysa fil qatrati wala fil qatratayn min ad-dami wudu illa an yakuna damman sa'ilan." All right, so this is the hadith that they use for that masala. All right, which is laysa fil qatra. It's not like one drop or 2 drops of blood and it doesn't nullify or cause the wudu to become invalid in any ways. إِلَنْ يَكُونَ دَمًا سَائِلًا, which means that the blood is pouring out. Like, for example, if a person got a gash on his arm, got shot or something that will cause the blood to pour out. So in this case, and they use this hadith to say that to build the issue that they build the issue on about a small amount of blood being okay, but a large amount being not okay. And this, of course, like I said, this is an issue that they use in their madhab to for this masala. But the hadith itself, this hadith is also is da'if also. The isnad of this hadith, you have Muhammad ibn Fadl ibn Atiyah, and he's matruk. And then some of the ulama of hadith have even said that he's a kadhab. So this hadith is not la yathbut al-batta. So the point is that again, we can bring a hadith like it goes back to the issue that I mentioned, that some of the ulama, they will bring a hadith that's da'if because there's nothing else in the masala in this issue except for a hadith that's da'if. So like if you read Sunan Abi Dawud, he'll do that from time to time. He'll bring a hadith that are da'if a lot. I mean, actually more than time to time. But if that's the only hadith that's in that issue, he'll do it from time to time. Because Abu Dawud, what he did in the Sunan, he's compiling the ahadith. So I mean, he didn't have the conditions of sihah for his ahadith, because what he's doing is compiling all the different ahadiths that the people use in those issues. So like you see, like that's why Sunan Abi Dawud is a lot different. It's when you're reading Sunan Abi Dawud, it's a lot different than reading like Bukhari and Muslim, obviously. Because Bukhari and Muslim, they put the conditions of a sihah, the hadith has to be authentic. But Abu Dawud, he wasn't doing that. He was compiling the ahadith, and sometimes, but he would always compile the ahadith that he would bring the most authentic narrations first, and then the lesser authentic. So a lot of the times, whenever you read in a bab where maybe he brings like 4 or 5 different ahadith, you'll see that the first 2 or 3 ahadith are like either muttafaqun alayh or they're in Bukhari and Muslim, and then and then they start to get less and less. So even to the point of either becoming hasan or just becoming like flat out da'if. But if you see, like, for example, like maybe he brings only 1 hadith in the bab, and the only hadith is da'if, because that's the only hadith that he had in that bab for that masala, for that issue. So he brings the hadith that's da'if, and he's not bringing it as a hujjah. He's not saying that, okay, this is that we should act upon this. Although some people have had that opinion, that to act upon the hadith that's da'if is better. At least to have a hadith that's da'if in the issue is better than not to have any hadith at all, because at least there's something to go back to. But but we can't build any type of ruling or judgment on a hadith that's not authentic. So this hadith right here is clearly, it's not authentic. So we can't build this ruling about the blood being a little bit being okay and a lot breaking the wudu or becoming najasa or whatever the case may be, because as we know, that doesn't exist for anything in this dunya. You can't, like, for example, like a little bit of urine is okay, but a lot of urine is najis. No, I mean urine, whether it's 1 drop, 2 drops, 3 drops, or a whole toilet bowl full of urine, is najasa. Khalas, it doesn't change from 1 drop to a lot, and no form of najasa does. Even a little piece of feces is the same as a whole bunch of feces. It's a little bit, it doesn't change. So the same thing with the blood. The blood is pure. There's no authentic hadith that takes the blood from its pure nature. Nothing. So, and this hadith is, of course, it's not authentic. So therefore, we can't use this as a judgment for that issue. Wallahu a'lam. Wa ilahuna subhanaka wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.